One of the highlights of this year's Melbourne Documentary Film Festival is a film called Pharmacy of Light. And I should mention that spelled FARM, Pharmacy of Light, a quantum leap in healing. And it's my great pleasure to be speaking to the director of the film, Ryan Wirick. Ryan, welcome to Movie Metropolis.
It's a pleasure to be here. Thanks for taking the time.
This is such an interesting look at how food and light can contribute so much in the healing process for human beings. How did the film first come about?
No, it's a great question. Well, Eric Cutter, the star of the film, he was also the star, one of the stars in a previous documentary I made called "The Need to Grow." And there was a lot of stuff that he always loved to talk about, and there was no way to kind of weave it into that movie because it was a movie really focused on the larger environmental issue of soil degradation around the world. And that kind of stayed in the back of my mind. And at the same time, my own history is like my father, he had alcohol-induced dementia for like 5 or 6 years, and that kind of gave me a crash course into a lot of issues and problems that I saw kind of in our medical establishment, and a lot of brilliant doctors who just had a limited understanding about food and about different connections. So you had a lot of experts who weren't talking to each other, communicating with each other. And I always wanted to kind of dig into that more as a storyteller. Um, and then it was just kind of diving deeper into really what's kind of been discovered in the field of biophotonics and quantum biology and how that relates to food. And that became kind of like a conversation I just hadn't seen put to film before. And so it seemed like a compelling thing to pursue. Um, so that's kind of where it came about. Just piecing those things together and just my interest as a storyteller to pursue conversations that I think address some of the biggest problems on our planet right now with the need to grow. It's like the degradation of our soil. Right now, we have over 60% of the population of the US are suffering from a chronic disease. Most people are malnourished and most people are kind of they're not healing properly because of constant exposure to toxins. So there's all these different key factors that come into the story in Pharmacy of Light that I think the film really helps to present a kind of blueprint for a way to move forward as a species where if we solve these health issues with the right kind of food and the right kind of infrastructure and decentralizing food, that will actually have ripple effects that will help the environment and decrease the toxins in our environment and really help the biosphere heal in a huge way. So I think all of those things kind of came together in an interesting way while making this film. And then unpredictable things happened, obviously, with like the COVID-19 pandemic and stuff. So, um, yeah, it was only a few months after The Need to Grow really launched globally that I started filming this. And I didn't originally see it as a feature-length documentary. I kind of Eric Cutter was starting a new farm, and I was just looking for a new project, and I just loved his food so much, so I just started showing up on his farm and kind of interviewing the farmers. I'm like, maybe something will come of this, maybe not, but I always got to leave with a huge thing of amazing food, and so that was like, selfishly, that was part of what I was doing was just inserting myself into a situation that seemed really interesting and then seeing where the story would take me.
How interesting to hear that backstory. That's so interesting. And the title Pharmacy FARM of Light is so interesting because as you mentioned your documentary, taking medications and drugs and all that sort of thing can be counterproductive, and that instead natural foods that are well grown and exposed to light and all that sort of thing can be much more beneficial for human beings.
Yeah, I mean, what fascinated me when I really started digging into the research of of the field of quantum physics and quantum biology is like every cell in our body is shooting out over 100,000 biophotons every second. And it really is kind of the steering mechanism behind all of the biochemical reactions happening in our body. And it enables um, everything to happen so quickly. It's really a light show in our body happening at the speed of light. And that kind of was a shift in my brain, how much of this chronic disease epidemic can go back to not only the toxins, but really a chronic miscommunication that's happening at the quantum level between all of our cells. And they notice in the scientific literature, it's like cancer cells are releasing more biophotons. They're less optimized. So there's a lot of miscommunication going on that's leading to chronic illnesses happening at younger and younger ages, where now we're seeing kids in their teens and younger suffering from illnesses that used to only be seen in the elderly. And so it's kind of like, what have we done wrong and how can we get back on track? And that was and if it can all relate to localizing our food and eating amazing food, then we that should be the direction. But it only really works if people understand that and if people decide this is really what I need for me and for my family, and then they can start to support the farmers who are actually producing that kind of medicinal quality food.
Yeah, medicinal quality food. That's so interesting to hear. Food as a substitute for medicines, or food as a medicine, if you like to put it that way, is
Yeah.
certainly very much in your documentary. I'm wondering how prevalent this idea is in the US, for example, because of course, as you make the point in the film, lots of farming areas and so on have now been redeveloped, and there's redevelopment of housing and of buildings and shopping centres, all that sort of thing. How much of this is catching on in terms of how people are viewing this idea?
Not fast enough, and it's not prevalent enough. And I think one of the reasons that I've always been attracted to models, practical models that don't necessarily say, let's go find an empty dirt lot, because there aren't a lot of empty dirt lots near where people live. And let's take the soil that's basically dead right now and spend several years getting it working again, and getting all the nutrients in that soil. I think there's a place for that, and we need that. But the innovative approach to use everything we know about soil science and regenerative farming and applying that in ways where we can actually grow on top of man-made surfaces, that where people live and where people work, I think is a key part of how this could actually be scaled in a way where people have regular access to this type of food. And so with Eric's model and lots of different models that are out there, it doesn't have to be that, but there's lots of different models that can take all the amazing knowledge we have about regenerative farming and the importance of soil health, but apply it to an urban setting where we're using those methods on top of man-made surfaces, right? Where people have in permaculture, they talk about access by proximity. If you're going to plant a garden at your house, don't plant it in the back corner where you never visit because you're never going to know when the food's ripe. You're never going to be out there. You're never going to notice if you might have an aphid problem or something. Plant it where somewhere along where you walk regularly because you're more likely to actually reap the benefits of that garden. And that's where I see like the larger vision of this is we need these types of micro farms all over the place where it's going to be more accessible than going to a grocery store. You're going to be on the way to the grocery store, you're going to pass multiple micro farms that are going to be selling amazing food, and it cuts out the middleman. So that's what we need to get back to, and more backyard gardens and all of that. A lot of people used to grow a lot more of the food, and that just isn't happening anymore. So we need to reconnect with nature through our food system and the nature within us. And a lot of that has to do with if we just align these systems in a way that um, really reinforces like what we understand about how we heal and the quantum physics of healing, the ripple effects of that are going to be vast for the planetary health and human health.
Absolutely. No, I like that idea considerably. Hoping it will catch on. In your documentary, you have used a fair bit of archival footage, science research footage, and so on. Were there any issues in finding all of that to incorporate into your documentary?
Yeah, it was a lot of digging into some archives, and I think one of the biggest examples of that is everything with Mei Wan Ho because she had passed away in 2016,
Hmm.
and in doing my research, and Fritz Albert Popp wasn't alive anymore, so it was really kind of going back and seeing what existed with him, but also who studied under him and who carried that research forward in new and exciting ways. And that's where I stumbled upon this documentary series that hasn't been made yet, but it's called On the Back of a Tiger. And I reached out to them because they showed in a trailer a clip with Mei Wan Ho, and I was like really digging into her research because she was all about not only about all the quantum physics side, but she was all about the human health side and the importance of fresh food and the dangers of GMOs and glyphosate and all of these toxic chemicals that we're using. So she was really connecting those dots in an amazing way. And when I first learned about her, I'm like, oh, well, I got to go interview her. And then it's like, oh no, she passed away 4 years ago. But they had done an amazing interview with her and shot with her. And so I was able to, they let me use some of the footage and I kind of dug through all that in a way that worked well with this film. And that just helped kind of weave the story together even better. Having an example of someone who actually worked directly under Dr. Fritz Albert Popp, who really was the pioneer behind research into biophysics and biophotons specifically, and she kind of carried that forward in her research. And so we get to see like a glimpse into her discoveries that I think directly relate to the importance of all of this information around light and how we heal, and the idea of quantum coherence, because it's like when you have quantum coherence can be seen in nature and like giant flocks of birds that move together and different things that are happening instantaneously. And there is a communication aspect to that that we don't fully understand. And, but there is a coherence level within our body too that we don't quite understand. But we do know that we're doing things that damage that communication system. And so it's just about kind of how can we turn that around? So there was a lot of going back, and that kind of influenced the art direction and the style of the film too, as far as like, who has kind of dipped into these concepts in the past, and how can we bring that to the forefront now? What's kind of been lost along the way? What underlies the biochemical reactions that really informs so much of our medical establishment. And how can we bring that research into the forefront around food and human health and preventative medicine?
Okay, all very interesting to hear all of that. How much production support did you have in making the film and having a crew and all that sort of thing?
Um, well, most of the film was just kind of me. um, uh, my wife Nikki Wirick is a producer on the film, and she helped. And Rob Herring, who I co-directed The Need to Grow with, he's a producer and co-wrote this film with me too. And they were on some of the shoots, but a lot of it I just kind of did on my own because there was no financial backing, and I'm used to just kind of showing up to a shoot and being able to shoot B-roll and shoot an interview and record audio and kind of just do it all myself. And um, so I just went out and did it. I wasn't really sure what was going to come of it, and a lot had to be figured out in editing, and then kind of like what are we missing? But films have a magical way of coming together. Like once you're kind of two-thirds of the way through, you can kind of sense like what's needed and where it needs to go.
Yeah. Well, you've mentioned editing. Obviously, you had lots more footage, etc., than you, of course, decided to use in the final cut. What were your decision-making processes in terms of what stayed and what had to go?
Yeah, I mean, I think the film has multiple parallel kind of stories going. There's an information thread. There's Eric's story and him starting a new farm, and then everything that happens once the pandemic starts. And then there's various threads with all the experts who kind of get certain moments with Dr. Valencia Porter, who's amazing, and her backstory. Um, and Dr. Zach Bush, of course, who's just brilliant and so lucky to have spent time with him, and and then the story of all the different farmers and stuff. So it was kind of like there were many different ways to sequence it, but I think part of it also was from the start of the film, we knew that the film kind of starts in January or March 2020 when the pandemic hits, and then it kind of jumps back to January 2020. And so we know there's this kind of looming, um, we know what's coming at some point, and when the hammer's going to be dropped at some point. So it was kind of like using all those different threads in order to have something that's compelling where we're continuously learning something, but we also know that it actually is headed somewhere. And then so all of those things kind of informed, I guess, like the pacing and the rhythm and when to kind of dive deep into a subject and when we need narration and when something's a montage and when something is an important scene. And that came together over 2 to 3 years of editing. And at some point, I got to the point where it was about 95% there, and then I took a break for almost a year for various reasons. But part of it was I'm just too close to this, and I need to come back to it I had lots of other things going on in my life, and I came back to it about 9 months later, and it was immediately like, okay, I know what needs to happen now. And then that last 5% is where you really kind of sweeten things up, trim things down, extend certain moments. And that's where a lot of the magic happens. And that's where a lot of like weaving in more archive footage and different things happened as well. So it was definitely a process, but but um, but it was fun. It was a really good time. I love seeing a film come together. There's nothing like it.
Oh, absolutely. Well done on that. And I gather the film has been screened elsewhere, apart from, of course, coming up at the Melbourne Documentary Film Festival. What sort of responses have you had?
The reception's been incredible. We had our world premiere at American Documentary Film Festival in Palm Springs. Um, uh, and it's screened in a few other festivals along the way, and we're kind of just ramping up and starting to build buzz, and we're so excited that it's having its Australia premiere next week, July 22nd, at Melbourne. And then there's lots more festivals on the horizon, but we're still kind of in the early phase of festivals. We've won some Best Documentary awards, and we're just kind of starting to build a buzz, starting to build a following, and it's the challenge is always like with a film like this is this is not a conversation that's really happening on a large scale. So it's introducing a lot of people to these concepts in a way that resonates and in a way that will impact their lives and affect change. And that takes time when there hasn't been a lot of this stuff is science that has been suppressed or kind of just not gone mainstream. And so we're trying to raise that to the surface and and get the word out. So I'm so lucky. We just heard yesterday, the day before, that we're a finalist in the best environmental documentary category at Melbourne, which is amazing because it really is. What I love about that is, really what the film is saying is if we solve these human health issues in this way, we are going to solve countless environmental issues as a natural byproduct of that. And these two issues are the same thing. When we poison the earth, we poison ourselves. When we heal ourselves, we help to heal the earth. And we shouldn't be thinking of ourselves as separate from nature in any way. And I think really at the crux of it is a lot of how we go about um, trying to control symptoms and end of life care, and everything I saw in dealing with my dad is we're missing some key components, some fundamental components on how we innately can heal and what needs to go into that. And that is inspired by and influenced by nature and the wisdom from nature. And we need to we can't lose that along the way. There's incredible medical interventions that are possible, but we can't lose the value of being connected to nature and the nature within us. And so that's kind of like the larger conversation that we really want to bring to the world.
Fair enough. No, no, that's well expressed. So hopefully it will have that sort of impact. So two quick questions, Ryan, just to conclude. One, are there any particular films, filmmakers, etc., that maybe have inspired your approach to filmmaking?
Oh gosh, that's a great question. I mean, I'm yeah, I mean, what's interesting when I am making a documentary, I deliberately don't watch a lot of other documentaries. I think the best compliment I ever got about The Need to Grow was like it didn't feel like a documentary at all. Like it just felt like a great movie. And so, well, just a couple weeks ago, I was at Devil's Tower in in Wyoming, which is the classic national monument and featured in Close Encounters of the Third Kind, which is one of my favorite films. No, I mean, I love Spielberg. I love all the classics. I love Kubrick. I love anything that when you walk away from it, you're you're not the same person anymore. It's like it's having just just an experience where it gnaws at you afterwards and you need to change or you need to think differently and kind of becomes part of you. And I've seen that in lots of documentaries and I've seen that in lots of movies. And so any filmmaker that can make me feel that where I walk away, it's like I can't stop thinking about that. Even one of my favorite docs that I recently saw at American Documentary Film Festival that's also playing in Melbourne is Her Shark Story. Like that movie, I love that movie and it's stuck in my head and I think it was brilliantly made and beautiful and and I just found myself thinking about it days and days afterwards and I couldn't get it out of my head. And so it's like anything I make, I would love for that to be the effect it has on a lot of people because that's the beauty of what art can do. It can really change people and get their perceptions to change, and the ripple effects of that are profound.
Fair comment. I endorse your comment about Her Shark Story. It is quite incredible film, but yours is too. So, Ryan, just to conclude, are you working on any other projects at the moment?
Oh, I have lots of different ideas on what I might focus on next. And I tend to kind of start multiple projects at a time and kind of see what really takes hold. Nothing really worth like throwing out there, but I have some different ideas, some series around certain subjects that I'm really interested in, and I'm sure I'll get into another feature length doc at some point. Right now, it's like it's too soon after finishing a film to think about starting a feature length doc because it's like, oh, that's 4 or 5 years of commitment most of the
Mm.
time. But I'm sure something will grab hold of me, and then it's like, no, this is the thing, and I get out of the way. This is just what's going to happen, and hopefully it won't take as long. But no, I'm excited for whatever comes next. Got lots of ideas though.
Okay.
Once I got something out there, I'd be happy to talk to you about it more though.
Fair enough. No, I absolutely understand that, and good luck with that all. We've been speaking to Ryan Wirick, who's the director of Pharmacy of Light, screening as part of the Melbourne Documentary Film Festival. Ryan, it's been a pleasure talking to you. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Really appreciate it.
Okay. All the best.
You too.